Tailing missions. Love them or hate them. They have been a core part of Assassin's Creed experience since the very beginning. And let's be honest, they were often frustrating. Whether it was tailing a target at a snail's pace or restarting the missions because you got spotted, these moments could really test your patience. But despite their flaws, tailing missions have evolved significantly over the years, adapting to the changing design philosophies of the franchise. In this video, I want to look back and see how tailing missions have evolved throughout the different generations of Assassin's Creed games. To keep things simple, we will compare them by splitting the series into distinct eras based on their gameplay styles. Let's see how this mission type have grown or regressed over the time. Let's start with the original Assassin's Creed. For me, this is where it all began, and honestly, these are my favorite tailing missions. They were quick, effective, and to the point, no unnecessary filler. In this game, tailing missions came in two flavors: following someone to pickpocket them, or tailing them to beat the shit out of them and get the information. There was something satisfying about this simplicity. You follow, stay hidden, grab the intel, and you are done. It might seem basic now, but back then it felt sharp and purposeful. Plus, it fit perfectly into the game's vibe of being a focused assassin gathering intel for your next target. This straightforward approach is something I sometimes miss in the later games. Then came Ezio and Renaissance, a massive leap forward in how tailing missions were designed. The Ezio trilogy really elevated these missions, whether it was Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, or Revelations. Tailing wasn't just about shadowing someone, it was about how you interacted with the world around you. You would be blending into crowd, hiring courtesans or mercenaries to make distractions, or simply just navigating the streets of Venezia, Roma, or Istanbul. What made this trilogy so special was how naturally these missions fit into the main story. They weren't just tagged on, they felt like they belonged there. Sure, every now and then they could drag a little, but it was hard to stay annoyed when you were sneaking through such beautiful, vibrant locations. These weren't just missions, they were little moments that pulled you deeper into Ezio's world and journey as an assassin. Fast forward to the Canvas saga covering Assassin's Creed 3 to Rogue. This is where it started to feel a little bit frustrating. Tailing missions in this era didn't innovate much compared to the Ezio trilogy. It felt like they just reused the same formula without adding anything new to keep it fresh. At first, tailing on the ship was a breath of fresh air. It was exciting and felt unique, with challenge of following a ship across the high seas while managing winds and waves. But as the game progressed, the novelty wore off. The mission became too long, too frequent, and honestly a bit of chore. This lack of innovation was disappointing. The dynamic environments, whether sneaking through cities, jungles, or on a ship, had potential, but the overuse and repetitive structure sucked the fun out of it. By the time you were tailing yet another target for what felt like an eternity, it was hard not to feel exhausted. The Canvas saga missed an opportunity to build on what came before, and instead it doubled down on quantity over quality. Moving on to the revolutionary duo, things got a lot much better. This could have been due to the heavy criticism that Black Flag received due to its horrible mission design and ungodly amount of tailing missions. Unity, for example, made a bold decision to remove traditional tailing missions almost entirely. This decision made the gameplay loop feel so much smoother compared to previous generations. Not having to creep behind a target for ages was such a relief. But of course, they added something else to fill the gap. Missions where you had to defend slow moving NPCs were introduced. Now, these could be really frustrating. Thankfully, most of these missions were tucked away in side content and didn't interfere with the main story. Then came Syndicate, which brought back traditional tailing missions but in a much more balanced way. The rope launcher made it fun to zip around rooftops, and tailing targets on horse carriages added a fresh dynamic. These tweaks made tailing missions feel enjoyable again, proving that it could still work when done right.
They're gone. Now to return to Mr. Green.
With the RPG trilogy, the approach to tailing missions shifted significantly. The franchise changed so much of its original gameplay formula, and in the process, tailing missions were removed entirely. Given the massive size of the worlds in these games, traditional tailing missions would have been a nightmare. Skipping them altogether was the right call. That said, these games didn't entirely abandon the idea of tracking and tailing targets. Let me explain. Suppose you wanted to take down a roaming boss, but their current location wasn't favorable to you. What you could have done was follow these roaming bosses to a location which was more favorable to you, where you could easily take them down. Similarly, you could track a group of enemies back to their camp to complete the objectives of these camps. It wasn't a formal mission type, but it felt organic and fit the RPG style gameplay. In Valhalla, there's one exception. A mission in Londinium where you follow a weaponsmith to his workshop. Surprisingly, it was well executed and didn't feel forced. It blended seamlessly into the story and the world. While the RPG trilogy mostly left tailing missions behind, moments like this showed they could still work when done thoughtfully. Mirage brings tailing missions back to the gameplay loop of the series, and they feel a lot closer to the Ezio trilogy than anything else. The missions are simple and take full advantage of the game's refined parkour and stealth mechanics. What's great is the number of these missions is kept deliberately low each time you encounter one. It feels like a fresh and welcome addition rather than an overused mechanic. Following a target through the vibrant streets of Baghdad is not just engaging, it's a wonderful nod to the series' root. Mirage proves that less can be more when it comes to tailing missions.
I've got new information. I am here.
So this was how tailing missions have evolved throughout the series. Now looking ahead at Assassin's Creed Shadows, I kind of hope that tailing missions, if included, are exclusive to Naue, as Yasuke is a tall man and will stand out when tailing a target, and it will feel a bit odd. The new Shadows mechanics that allows us to hide and create our own shadows will introduce some interesting moments and dynamic feel to tailing missions. With that being said, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please subscribe and share, and I will see you on the next one.